I would like to thank you joining us. I'm happy that we have so many very good speakers on the stage, and I feel honored that we can start the day with Jens Bischoff. He's going to reflect on what does the future hold in international comparison. I think we can start off afterwards here. And yes, I would like to ask you to get on the stage. Thank you, Jens.
Yeah, thank you. 1, 2, 3. No, I don't have any slides, just speaking. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. It's very nice to have you. Oh, that's a delight, Rosanna. Thank you for coming and joining. Markus, thanks for the introduction. I think it's a little bit unfair because with this program, actually, we have to sit in the room the entire day. And I have to say it's a huge compliment to you personally, but also to Frieden Partner, that you were able to attract such a distinguished audience and certainly also panelists and interview partners. So kudos to you. I think that's going to be a very interesting day, which basically means you're sitting in the right stage here, the blue stage, here at the ITB in Berlin. It's great to be here. It's always a delight to be here in Berlin. For me, the day started, so to speak, yesterday at a pre-ITB press table. It was very interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to also later join the panel together, led by Lee, and also with Dara, with Aletta and Dominic. I think we're going to tee some interesting questions off regarding the industry and what keeps us busy at the moment. But let me start by saying, you know, the ITB is a great example because this is where the world comes together. This is where people meet in person, and that's good. And many of you might have flown here or have flown here, and or you're planning to fly through the course of this year. I think it's clear our industry has faced very, very difficult years, but here's the good news. We're back, the industry is back, aviation is back, and I think we can see this all over the place when we're going to see the stands around the ITB here in Berlin. If we look at the IATA figures, I think the global demand has reached a record level in 2024. It was an increase of over 10% compared to the year before. And it just shows that people want to fly. We have a strong desire for mobility in each and every segment. If you look at the business travel side, and again, the example is right here at the ITB, we see that people want to meet in person, and also we might be a little bit tired of video conferencing and other means of distant communication. We also see a very strong demand and increase in the visit friends and relative segment because, of course, of strong growth in migration, but also because people want to see their relatives and their friends in the home countries. And in leisure travel, goes without saying, we see a booming situation right now. We have record bookings already in for summer 25, so there's really a strong signal that even the leisure summer 2025 will become a good role. And most importantly, aviation plays a significant and decisive role in this game because we're connecting people, we're connecting cultures, and we're connecting economies. And that is something which I think is very important and needs to be supported and driven forward. But so much, unfortunately, for the good news. The traffic situation in Germany, and this is something I want to reflect this morning, is everything else but bright. We're lagging behind after Europe or the rest of Europe. Our recovery remains much slower than in most other countries in the European Union. And not because of a lack of demand. I can tell you the Germans still want to travel. But the challenge is we have local conditions, we have frame conditions, which are the most expensive ones around in Europe. And even before the pandemic, the government-induced taxes and fees in Germany were already higher than in most other countries. And since 2019, the state-imposed costs have more than doubled. And this is certainly extremely concerning. This relates to the aviation tax, this relates to the aviation security charges, and it also relates to the air traffic control fees, which all have grown steeply. In 2024 alone, the government imposed costs for airlines in Germany, and all the airlines in Germany will increase by another 1.2 billion euros, which makes it to a total cost and record high of 4.5 billion euros, which the airlines operating in and out of Germany will bear this year. Germany needs a competitive framework to support economic development, not only tourism, but also economic development. And our message to the future German government is absolutely clear. The aviation tax must be abolished and the fees and charges significantly reduced. We look at the example of Sweden, by the way, where we see that as of this year, they will abolish the aviation tax in order to stimulate the growth in air travel. Today, the state-imposed cost per flight ticket is 32 euros if you fly out of Germany. If we compare it to Spain, it's 4.5 euros. And I think there is no rational explanation of this difference. The cost gap between Germany and the most affordable European airports is actually widening and has a huge impact on airline profitability and operational decisions. Airlines, such as Dara's Ryanair, are relocating their aircrafts out of Germany in order to find better conditions, better profitability, and better frame conditions. The aircraft capacity will remain tight for the years to come, and we all know what the supply situation looks like. The result? A negative outlook for Germany as an aviation hub. We lose added value and connectivity. We have made serious mistakes already for an export nation relying on strong international connections which seem to fade out. Other countries, actually, they show a different trend. In 2024, every other European country has surpassed 2019 capacity numbers, except Germany. And that demand for air travel remains high, especially in the neighboring countries. Basically, other airlines are flying around Germany in order to avoid these frame conditions. But, and we see it, leisure travel demand is at an all-time high. By 2025, holiday airline capacity will return to 2019 levels, and it will continue to grow. And despite these challenges, by the way, the German aviation industry focuses on the future. Massive investment in the sustainability and innovation are happening. Every year, billions are invested in infrastructure, digitalization, passenger comfort, and of course, customer experience, and the climate protection with a clear goal of CO2 neutrality by 2050. Airports are on the forefront of this transformation. If you look at Munich, aim to be CO2 neutral by 2035. Frankfurt is building an eco-friendly Terminal 3 and is currently installing a kilometer-long solar farm along the runway, which is almost in operation. Düsseldorf is even planning to produce CO2 neutral aviation fuel at the airport in the future. And airlines are also making a great deal, an effort towards CO2 neutrality by 2050, but this needs, of course, huge financing efforts. A new aircraft, by the way, reduces fuel consumption and CO2 emissions by up to 25%. And in average, in 2024, German aircraft consumed only 3 liters per passenger per 100 kilometers. And the most modern aircraft, the latest generation, is even actually able to cut it by a third, now approaching 2 liters per 100 kilometers per passenger. A new era of aviation begins obviously also in 2025 with sustainable aviation fuels. Since January 21st, every flight includes a certain percentage of sustainable aviation fuels, starting at 2% blending ratio, increasing to 70% by 2050. And all this, again, comes at a cost, ultimately passed to the passengers through the ticket prices. All airlines must face the same conditions, and unfortunately, this is not the case in Europe. Unfair competition in European climate protection legislation remains a major issue. Germany has introduced an e-fuel quota from 26, and ridiculously, no e-fuels, power-to-liquid fuels, are available yet. Subsidies have been cut by the recent government, and large-scale e-fuel production in Germany is still years away. Despite this, airlines are still required to pay a fine as of 2026, and this is totally absurd. It's 3,000 euro per ton for a fuel which is not even available, which is really ridiculous. But the Green Party blocked this implementation until the last moment, and as a result, airlines from Germany will face another 150 million in penalties in 2026 alone. The ticket prices will inevitably be affected, and EU regulations also create competitive disadvantages for European airlines. A direct flight from Berlin to Singapore must use sustainable aviation fuels for the entire journey, and we know this comes at a significantly higher cost than fossil fuels. But a flight with a transfer somewhere else, like in Doha, Dubai, Istanbul, only needs sustainable aviation fuels for the first leg to their hubs. Afterwards, they can do whatever they want. So we proposed many solutions to the European Commission for fair climate protection. A SAF levy on all tickets, a SAF surcharge for airlines currently exempt for these regulations, and reinvesting this into the buildup of sustainable aviation fuels. Only with a level playing field, we can tackle and finance the challenges ahead. Let me come to a close. I think we're ready to engage in a dialogue with our new policymakers in Brussels, but also in Berlin, and we made numerous proposals. It is now time to act. We are at a tipping point for our industry, and it's actually 12:05, and not 5 ahead of 12. I would thank you very much for listening. Very much looking forward, Lee, to our panel, and I hope I could provide some food for thoughts for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jens. Great way to set the scene for the next half an hour or so of discussion. As Jens said, my name's Lee Hayhurst. I work for Aviation Business News. We're based in London, and I've been asked to moderate this panel. So I'm going to ask the speakers to come up quickly, because we've got very little time and a lot to talk about. If Jens takes the first seat, joining Jens will be Aletta von Massenbach, from CEO of BER Airport from Berlin. Welcome, Aletta. We've also got Pierre-Dominique Prume, who's the Director of Aviation Infrastructure at Fraport. So welcome, Pierre. And as mentioned earlier, we've also got Ryanair with us. So Dara O'Brady, Chief Marketing Officer for Ryanair. Welcome, Dara. So Jens set us up beautifully to start the conversation. The time is now, we're 5 minutes to midnight. This is getting critical. But we also are talking in a very interesting political situation, not least in this country and all over the world, but particularly over in the States. Lots is changing globally, and it's having an impact everywhere. But we're talking about Germany today, and obviously recent elections here. I'm going to bring in Dara first as our airline expert on the panel. Dara, it was mentioned you are deciding where you put your aircraft based around some of the things that Jens was mentioning, the costs of operating in certain airports. We've seen what you've done in Denmark recently. Is this having traction? Because I suppose you can threaten this kind of thing, but it's only when it actually happens do people sort of maybe sit up and notice, and actually do things. Jens called for the abolition of flying taxis. That's very ambitious. They've been with us a long time, and it's very hard to see them disappearing overnight. But are the politicians listening, do you think, because you're actually prepared to put your money where your mouth is?
Firstly, thank you, and good morning, everybody. I think it's an interesting question. Are the politicians listening? I would say the previous political parties obviously weren't listening, hence we are in a situation, particularly in the German market, which isn't unique to Ryanair, but actually affects all airlines and airports, where we have a hugely uncompetitive market. And I think the piece that politicians potentially have missed here, and particularly when it comes to Ryanair, is that our assets, our aircraft, are mobile units. So we are competing in Germany with 37 other countries that we operate in, and we can take an aircraft, pick it up and move it to another market if it's more competitive. So we have a bizarre situation in Germany that across, the aviation tax, the security fees, and even the ATC charges, those 3 route charges are significantly more. In some cases, there is no aviation tax. Jens mentioned in Sweden. Sweden was a great test case for us. We went up and we met the government in Sweden. Sweden's aviation market and tourism wasn't growing. They said, what are we to do? We said, you've got to lower your access costs. The minister said, okay, well, we'll scrap the aviation tax. That's available for all airlines. They scrapped the aviation tax, and we responded immediately by putting in 2 aircraft straight away and guaranteeing 2 million more tourists in and out of Sweden. So there's very tangible results relating to that. But certainly, I take an optimistic view that there is a wonderful opportunity for this new government in the backdrop of a more competitive European Union. I would start with a more competitive German nation and a German economy, and I think they have a wonderful opportunity to reset the competitiveness, which will help airports, will help airlines, not just Ryanair, but help all airlines, and it will absolutely stimulate growth. It's the only European economy that is behind where it was pre-COVID when it comes to aviation.
Yeah, actually coming from the UK and listening to what the situation is in Germany is something of an eye-opener, because these debates are happening in the UK, as you know, Dara, with our own aviation taxes that are going up as well, and I think you talked about that in Ryanair. Pierre, let's get the view from Germany, from an operator in this country. We have a new political situation, new people to talk to, new people to influence. What if you had them in front of you today? What's your key message to the people who will be making the big decisions that affect aviation in Germany in the next coming years?
I think Jens sets the stage. There is a clear warning signal coming from the aviation industry. And the message is, at the moment, and this is what you mentioned, Germany is not competitive any longer for the industry. And this is not about airlines and airports. It's about Germany as a whole country, because we are losing connectivity at the moment. Frankfurt Airport is still the hub in the world with the best connectivity. We are ranked number 1 in 2024. But we lost last year more than 25% of our connectivity. And this is a clear danger signal, because the economy, which is driven by experts in Germany, the economy is losing connectivity, and this is a bad signal. What we need is, an agenda for growth in aviation in Germany. And we take whatever is helpful. Politicians should take decision to reduce costs, government-driven costs, but also to increase competition. It both comes together, and then we will see again growth in Germany. I'm very optimistic, because the infrastructure is there. This is also a clear message. At the moment, economy is not doing well in Germany, and many branches are crying for help. What we can say as airports, we are ready for additional growth in Germany. We are investing. We could not put our infrastructure to Eastern Europe or Asia or wherever. We are investing at the moment in Frankfurt more than 4 billion euro for a new terminal. We are ready for additional flights. We could bring these airports from what we have, 63 million passengers to 88 million passengers. So the infrastructure is there, but we need another framework.
Aletta, let's bring you in. Last time I came to ITB, I didn't fly through the nice spangly new Berlin airport because it wasn't open. I know there's a long story about that, but it is there, and it was really a great experience last night to come in through the new Berlin airport. So it does show there is investment, as Pierre was saying, in this industry, in this country. But again, same question to you, really. What is happening in this country that is preventing it being more competitive? And what would you say to the new set of politicians about what you want from Berlin Airport?
I think what is pretty amazing is that really, all forces and all companies that align behind aviation, that we are fully aligned when it comes to bring forward this aviation location, this positioning of Germany within the European and the international global markets as an important aviation hub. And what is required? Obviously, we need infrastructure. We have the infrastructure. We need technology. We have the technology. We have the right people. We have the know-how. We have everything. But we need to be competitive. And I think this is a bit, it went behind a bit the forefront. So it's not anymore so much to the attention of politicians when we talk about politicians. So they think that other things have another priority. So why competitiveness? We are Germany, and this is then the moment where we say, yes, we are Germans and we are very good in lots of things, but we should never forget that we also need to be as good as others or better than others. We need to see what is the benchmark. We need to see the surroundings, and we can't sit on an island and believe that we are doing our things without knowing and without understanding what others are doing around us. And this is a bit, perhaps the additional point to what is already said before. That's a bit, that we consider ourselves sitting on an island and we are creating our own world, but that's not necessarily true for aviation.
Yeah, and we're trying to get into the sort of political mindset that got us to where we are today. So politicians and politics, they levy taxes for a number of reasons. One is to make money, obviously, for the exchequer, out of industries that are making money. They also sometimes levy taxes to change behaviour, to reduce things that they don't like us doing, taxes on smoking or drinking and so on. What's happened maybe in Germany, but maybe largely in Europe as well, is it more the latter, that we have had a political situation in which they're trying to change the way we behave more than they are thinking that here's a booming industry we want to support?
Well, I believe you're touching on a very good point. What is the incentive to do something different, right? And if we look at, let's say, if you don't, or if you should not smoke, or if you should not drink, then you certainly can put a tax or a penalty on alcohol or on tobacco or whatever. But unfortunately, there's no incentive to really say what you should do. In our case, that would be very easy, quite frankly. If you just look to the US, what they do in the Inflation Reduction Act is much smarter than what we do over here in Europe, because they incentivize and subsidize the e-fuels or the sustainable aviation fuels very much. They're so price attractive that everybody wants them. That basically builds up the economies of scale, which then lets the prices drop, and you can finally, stop your subsidies, which is very, very rational. Yeah. In Europe, we're doing the opposite. We think that punishing and, putting penalties on the fossil fuels will change our behavior. Actually, these are taxes. They are not even bound to a certain usage. We cannot even say you take 2 billion from the German aviation tax and we put it into the buildup of sustainable aviation fuels. It just goes in the big box of taxes in Germany, and they pay all the things which they have to pay. So that is very unfortunate, because I believe an incentive scheme of supporting what we actually want to use, sustainable aviation fuels, would be a much better way to drive the change and motivate people to use whatever we should use, meaning or eco-friendly fuels, and then also have economies of scale which bring down the prices, because again, we're still in a situation where even biofuels cost 3 to 5 times more than fossil fuels. And if we do not change this, this will also have a huge impact on ticket prices, which ultimately will lead to lesser demand overall. And that is something which I think we can see in the US, and Dara already mentioned the very close correlation of the Swedish government to say, okay, if we have to catch up and create more volume and create more economic effect for the country, we just abolish the aviation tax. And it was a very easy way to improve the frame conditions in Sweden.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, what happened in the UK with APD is it started off as a green tax, which is a way of saying we want you to do less of this if you don't mind, but then actually went into general taxation. So it just becomes too easy for government because it's easily collectible. I think it's one of the most easily collected taxes, and therefore it becomes something they have to collect every year. And if the aviation industry comes to the government and says we want you to collect less of this, they say, well, how do we make up the shortfall, and put it back onto you and say, well, but that's not. I guess that's not your job as an airline, is it? So what sort of arguments are you having around Europe about taxes?
Well, I think firstly, I think probably we take the view that one of the greatest achievements of the European Union has been the free movement of people. I don't think that we've ever been as connected. And whether that's for jobs or for visiting family or friends, and you look at the dispersal that's out there. So I think the movement of people is transient to our nature now. I don't think we're going backwards. I don't think you can put a tax on people and say, oh, I'm not going to travel. And travel isn't all, oh, let's go on our sun holidays. So I think fundamentally the reason why governments take a tax is because it's just easy to collect. We have it, as Jens mentioned, one of the most frustrating things about it, like airlines pay billions in taxes for environmental charge, and none of it is reinvested into the environment. We see that at home in my own country, in Ireland, where we actually collect the tax, and the money from the ETS scheme is used to fund bus routes, which is ironic. Diesel buses being used from the tax collected from aviation. So I would echo what Jens said. I think what's clear is there has to be a clear framework and policy for governments. Like if you take SAF, like the two biggest routes to becoming greener in an aviation sense isn't stopping people from flying. It's investment in technology, i.e. new aircraft, which is getting greener. Newer aircraft have less emissions. And the second part of the equation is going to be in the sustainable aviation fuel. And I think governments need to do more to incentivize not the airlines, but the production of it. And I think if the production of it becomes incentivized, the cost of it comes down and the usage of it goes up. But what's clear is there is no real policy. I would say that when you look at collective governments, they see it as a way of raising money for the exchequer rather than actually what they say it's about. And I think, we are starting to see with the latest round of elections, I do think there is a shift away now where over the previous 5 years there was a policy of high taxation, this is the way to solve the green problem, a lot of green parties and governments we'll just tax passengers, whereas actually now we see a lot of places are uncompetitive, the money wasn't fixing the problem, and they're going to have a rethink, and we would certainly like to think that there'll be far more progressive policy when it comes to this as we move forward.
Pierre, do you feel from the sort of the regulatory side of things, there's been too much onus being placed, firstly on airlines themselves to fix a problem that is an industry problem? It's wider than just the airlines because the entire industry relies, I think, as Jens said in his speech, this whole event relies on airlines connectivity and flying people in and out. But the onus is on the airlines specifically when there's a large ecosystem here that has a vested interest to play. And do you think there's a lack of understanding that tourism, connectivity, people moving in and out of a country is extremely good for the economy of a country? Is there a lack of understanding of that, hence priorities are slightly skewed?
It's a difficult question. I think what we did really well in the last month with Jens as the head of the BDL and all with other people, we are louder than in the past. And I think that politicians in Germany, they now understand in which situation we are at the moment. So it's not a lack of understanding, it's a lack of action now, because we didn't see any action. We see nice papers coming from different parties, We had the election last week in Germany, and in the programs we saw a lot of understanding. But what we now expect is action, yeah, we're looking forward. But to be also a little bit optimistic, there are a few examples in Germany which show that we can do better. Aletta and Berlin Airport and Frankfurt Airport, Aletta and me, we are both good examples regarding, for example, security checks. We took over responsibility for security checks from the federal police, and we did much better. Not because we are better humans, but our framework is much better. We could do more flexible. In Germany, in Frankfurt, we are starting in our third year. We reduced waiting times at our security checks by 97%. 98% of our passengers waited last year less than 10 minutes on our security. It was a huge impact because we invested a lot in new technology. Why I mentioned this example is there is a way forward. We want to take over responsibility. We want to invest, but we need the freedom to do. And this is what we should shout even louder to the politicians. Hey, there is an industry. We want to do business in Germany. Let us do our business, and then it's good for the economy, not only for the tourism economy, but also for the whole German economy.
Aletta, does German politicians, the German regulator have the power to do this on their own? You're part of EU, you're subject to EU regulations as well. To what extent can Germany sort of forge its own path without bringing the rest of Europe along with it?
Well, I think, lots of stumbling blocks that are sitting on our road forward are coming from Germany. It's not coming from the EU. And sometimes, you hear politicians saying, yes, but it's coming from Brussels, we're very sorry. And I say, okay, and who brought it to Brussels? Maybe Berlin. So I think, we as Germans have to be very clear and very honest with ourselves. To what extent is Germany contributing to an increase in burdens and bureaucracy in Brussels, and then we are surprised. So I think that's one part, but the things that we were discussing before, they're all national, at the national level. It needs to be solved at national level, and it's all about mindset, it's about understanding the importance of aviation for the economy, but also for all the other things that our new German government will have to face with our allies. So we are not sitting on an island, and we are not sitting in the paradise. So we need to be prepared for what's coming up in the future, and for that we need a very strong aviation as well. For that, I think it's, perhaps, when it is sometimes a bit difficult to get their time to listen to us, is because we are not a budget number. So we are, user finance infrastructure. So we are doing everything ourselves. We do the transformation ourselves, we do the future ourselves, we do the infrastructure ourselves. Everything is done by ourselves. And the only thing what we want is to get a clear pathway and to get a clear framework, and not to change it every other day. Whenever you have a change in, when they woke up in the morning and thought, oh, it could be interesting, and why is this and why is that? So I think we need a very clear understanding there, and then we are doing our job. Yeah, of course we need, for what is, what you said, it is the most important thing is the airlines need the money to invest into new technology in the aircraft. Therefore, they need to have room to grow, to make this possible, this huge investment. And then there is also the need to replace fossil fuel with SAF. And this costs money, and there we need to have a joint, but more a global approach to it, and not a national one. And this is maybe perhaps a bit the problem for them, because who is the one in the lead to implement this and to bring this transformation for SAF?
Do you feel, just to look at the international picture for a minute, sitting in Europe, there's a potential for a bit of a pincer movement. We can see the growth in aviation going east. Obviously, we've seen it in the Middle East, but India is on the march as well, and obviously lots going on in China and the APAC region. And then we look the other way and see, a country that's going to drill, baby, drill, but maybe they're going to be fly, baby, fly as well. Do we worry, sitting in the middle, like literally in the middle, geographically, that there's some sort of pincer movement afoot, and we're going to find increased competition from both sides? First, maybe from Berlin's point of view first.
I think, it's always a question of perspective. If we are sitting in the middle, but, we are kind of used with this map where Europe sits in the middle, and I think we feel very comfortable with sitting in the middle, and we had very good ways how to maneuver this geographic location. But geography matters, and therefore, it's clear that there are certain developments that maybe, don't bring any longer Europe alone in the middle of everything, especially when Europe decides to take certain decisions to make it a bit more difficult and to allow, to be circumvented. And this is a decision that Europe needs to take. Do we want that or don't we want that? But, you cannot forbid it, but you have to be competitive. You need to understand what it makes to stay in the middle. But I'm not afraid of being, kind of torn apart. But to your question, I think it's about a very smart use of our geographic location understanding, but also the benefits of other geographic locations in the world.
Yeah. Dara, from Ryanair's point of view, you see this competition internationally in more than just a battle for a customer, but actually you need to get the aircraft out of Boeing, out of Airbus, and that's not easy because you've got significant competitors who are ordering huge numbers and they're not coming into Europe necessarily. So behind the scenes, there's huge competition that you're facing as an operator, which do the politicians understand and realise and appreciate how difficult it is behind the scenes in the sector?
Yeah, we probably take a far more simplistic view than what's happening in America. We look at it in the context of getting aircraft. If you were setting up an airline today, you probably wouldn't get your first aircraft until about 2030, 2031. There's huge constraints in the supply, in the manufacturing chain. So when you look out over the next 5 years, you have to look at the aviation market and say, where's the growth going to come from? So we have 300 aircraft on order. We'll grow to 300 million passengers. That's up from 200 million this year. So we're going to grow by 100 million passengers over the next 9-10 years. But where's the rest of the growth going to come from? And that growth has to be stimulated by aircraft. We are seeing an increase in a lot of airlines in the Middle East with aircraft orders. You're seeing India with a lot of aircraft orders. But the market is hugely constrained. So, I don't necessarily think it's a political issue. There is market constraints. And we'd be looking at going, we're still going to grow by 100 million passengers over the next 10 years. Our decision is, where are we going to put that growth? And then the question you have to ask, where does Germany sit within that question? So when we sit down and we say, okay, we have 300 aircraft coming and we're going to grow by 100 million passengers, are we going to put any of those into Germany? And as it stands, it comes back to the root of a far simpler problem, which is the access costs are uncompetitive and we need to do more to fix it. And that's a government-led approach, that's an airport-led approach, and the airlines will ultimately respond with growing. So we probably don't look at it as in the context of, is it an American issue, is it a Middle East issue? It's far simpler in our view. We will have 100 million passengers, we'll have the aircraft, where can we grow? And will Germany be in the equation when we're discussing that?
Yeah, and how does Eurowings plan? I mean, you have a different situation than Dara with Ryanair, but what do you look at when you're planning Eurowings' future and where you operate and how you can make money?
Well, I think we've come a long way, obviously, from year-long trials of, establishing a kind of a low-cost carrier within the Lufthansa group. But after restructuring and also repositioning the brand over the COVID pandemic, basically, it led to the success that we turned around the company. We're clearly in the black numbers, we're profitable, we're growing. We just ordered 40 new aircraft of the 737 MAX series. So everything is tied towards growth. But again, I can only chime in by saying we can only deploy these aircraft in Germany if we find frame conditions which are competitive. because otherwise, I mean, we have not only a Eurowings Germany, we also have a Eurowings Europe. And I can dispose them to this AOC, to the Airline Operating Certificate, outside Germany, and put them to Sweden, to the Czech Republic, to Spain, or somewhere else. And that is something which, again, Dara told already, we have mobiles, we don't have immobile assets. And that is something which really comes along. My real point is also when you talked about the question, what can be done internationally and what is the competition doing? A lot of things are happening around Europe. I mean, again, this is not about complaining here. We're just pointing to a tipping point here, which is a very difficult situation for aviation in the heart of Europe. But there are easy solutions. And that's my point, right? I mean, even if you look at international travel, if you travel from Europe, somewhere in Europe, let's say to Japan or China or somewhere else in Asia, it is very easy to put a destination-related charge, environmental charge, on that ticket, that it does not make a difference if you fly with carrier A, B, or C, a European or a non-European carrier. So it's no rocket science, to be very honest, to find answers. And this is what drives us actually crazy, because we're, putting out these solutions to the politicians for quite a while, and they're so far not heard, not translated into actions. And we hope that with the new government, also in Brussels, but also here in Germany, we will hopefully see changes and we see action, because again, can only re-emphasize we're at a tipping point for aviation in Germany.
We are at an interesting period in the evolution of the aviation industry, because it's probably around 3 decades since really low-cost flying came to Europe. I remember buying my first low-cost flight. It was a complete revelation, and look what's happened since. It's unbelievable, and obviously Ryanair has been very much at the forefront of that. And actually in Europe, that's not really going away. We're seeing a lot of changes in the States with the low-cost carriers becoming more like full service. But actually over here, low cost seems to be here and here to stay. The model's really kind of established and working in many respects. It has opened new routes and it has supported new destinations. So we got 5 minutes left. I'd like to just get each of your view. In that sense, we've experienced 30 years of low cost flying and the sort of the boom in the aviation industry in this part of the world. Sitting here today, looking ahead, I mean, it's a bit crystal ball, and everyone is going to be hostage to fortune, what they say on this stage. But what gives you? Let's finish on a positive note. What gives you confidence that some of the things that have been said on stage today are getting through? The messages are being heard, and there will be some change. So we'll go Dara, and we'll go all the way down the line.
Yeah, look, we would echo is low cost here to stay. Like we would view it almost as there's about 1.1 billion seats in the short haul market. It's a commodity. People's expectation and service over the last 25 years have changed in terms of get on time, have a good airport experience, get out quickly, and everybody's happy. I see that continuing. We'd be reasonably optimistic as a business. As I said, we're going to grow to 300 million passengers. We would like to think that the German market will have to fix itself. I think it's inevitable at the size of the German market and it being in the centre of Europe. It's only so long it can go on being non-competitive. So I'd be very optimistic that I think in the next 12, 24, a little bit longer, I think we will see policy reform. I think we will see Germany coming back to growth. We ourselves, we've said we'd double our passenger growth here in Germany over the next 5 years if there's change. So the opportunity for the market to rebound is significant, and we certainly will take an optimistic view today that the new government has a huge chance to put that at the heart of driving the economic recovery here.
Thank you, Dara. Pierre, what makes you optimistic?
All the solutions we need are on the table. I think there is a strong voice coming from the industry now, and there will be some action in the right direction, I think, even in Germany. And what makes me optimistic is that the framework we built, we discussed it today, is already there. Air traffic is booming all around the world. And we will benefit also in Germany from that. Once again, Frankfurt Airport, we are one step ahead, finishing the largest infrastructure program in Germany, an airport ever seen. We could bring this airport to 88 million passengers, 126 movement per hour. So there's a lot of room for improvement, for growth, and this makes me optimistic. But we need really a change coming from the politics in Germany. This is absolutely necessary, and this should be the headline of the discussion today. There is a strong need for a political change in Germany.
That's definitely been said a few times, and hopefully they're listening. A letter, as Jens said, booming demand. So we could be sitting here talking about poor demand, but we're not. That's very positive. So the underlying health of the industry is very good, isn't it?
It's wonderful, and we are still, it is aviation. Aviation is technology, aviation is the future, and aviation means, bringing people together. And, sitting, on the stage was, two, I don't know whether I want to call you Lucas Carrier, but it doesn't matter how I call you, but, you bring people, to where they want to be, where they have to be. You bring connectivity, and this at affordable prices. And this has such a big value. And the two of us, we are doing all the rest on the ground, to make sure that everything works fine today and tomorrow. And I think if we look at all together, I think there is, a lot of positive signs that make us optimistic for the future of aviation in Europe and in Germany.
Good. Final word to Jens. You're going to have to be quick because we're over time.
Yeah, I know. We're running out of time. So I'm going to close the loop. As I said, we're connecting people, cultures, and economies. And that's a very meaningful task. And I believe we should not plan on doing that by reducing mobility. But technology will solve that problem and will eventually solve that problem. We will do our best in order to keep the frame conditions accordingly competitive. But at the same time, I believe as an aviation industry, we should also think about the generations to come, because connecting with people, cultures, and economy is very, very important also for the future generations. And that is something where I feel personally responsible of, no matter if in my corporate role or in my association role. And I believe we are on a good path in order to solve that. As I said, we have a lot of proposals and solutions on the table. We will solve them, and technology will do its trick in order to really also then finally meet our environmental targets by 2030 and 2050.
Thank you, guys. Please join me in thanking the panel. They've had some really good insights, some strong opinions. And if it makes any difference, coming from the UK, we're about to have one almighty row about Heathrow expansion. So we're with you. We understand the challenges. So please join me in thanking Dara, thanking Pierre, thanking Aletta, and thanking Jens for your time today. That's it for this session. In about 5 minutes' time, your next session will start. It's an interview with MSC Cruises, another industry that has movable assets, just like Dara was saying. So please join us for that, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.